The mysterious and unexplained images of the moon showing structures and artifacts and what looks like pieces of craft. The most mysterious and unexplained images, and they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, although facts versus myth can be hard to determine when evidence is limited and theories run wild. The stories associated with the following images are not easy or even likely to be explained, and we see that the most mysterious and unexplained photos of the moon. There are indications that seismically and volcanically the moon really does represent a dead world. When the Apollo 14 spacecraft blasted its third floor into the lunar surface, the moon reacted like a big bell. It rang like a bell. Pulse tremors lasted about 3 hours that were recorded reaching a depth of 28 to 32 kilometers. And when during the departure of the same spaceship from the lunar soil, the moon was discarded, new vibrations were caused, which lasted for about 90 minutes when the craft was discarded onto the surface. From a biological point of view, nothing excludes the existence of living beings inside the lunar sphere. The moon is a place without an atmosphere, without winds and corrosive forces. However, skilled observers found significant changes on its surface. Strange objects were observed, over 700 strange devices in the shape of pyramids or cones, but also mysterious squared monoliths. Arthur Clarke introduced in his film A Space Odyssey in the first scenes lights and bright spots observed in addition to appearances. However, there are also disappearances. Astronomer Mendeleer observed 4 large walls forming an enigmatic square, and inside it was an enigmatic cross, and all that disappeared. And radio broadcast from inside the moon concerning claims. In the late 1930s, Grote Rember of the Bell Company intercepted radio messages from the moon. Unfortunately, this episode was classified as confidential, and its publication was prohibited, but we managed to find that the radio broadcast came from the interior and not from the surface of the moon. Several amateur astronomers picked up signals from the moon in 1927, 28, and 1934 with self-made radio telescopes. In 1935, similar messages were captured by Marconi and Chelsea. In 1956, Ohio State University scientists claimed to have intercepted a type of coded message from the moon. The astronauts, when traveling to the moon, heard from the internal communication system strange music. French writer Robert Sarrou claimed that astronaut Al Worden, while walking on the moon, heard a series of inexplicable words. According to Sarrou's testimony, the enigmatic message said, Mara the Lama, Rabbi Adardi, Didi and Tawar Esa Kunis Alim. The message so far remains untranslated, but ancient traditions speak of a world hidden inside the moon. If someday ancient Greek texts fall into our hands, we will discover not only the language of the messages, but the identity of these hostile inhabitants of the moon who broadcast messages of mass hysteria on over 100 frequencies for corresponding languages of planet Earth will be confirmed. The effect of the moon on human feelings. Since ancient times, the moon has been a source of poetic inspiration and an object of divine worship. In Egypt and Syria, the moon was worshipped as Astarte, from the Greek word astir, who was a beautiful goddess. The Jews called her Astaroth, the queen of heaven, and from their habit of hating what they did not consider, they desecrated this. The Greek worshipped her as a goddess of night light. The Romans worshipped her as Selene, the Diana. The Arabs, the Indians, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Scandinavians, and some tribes of the Pacific Islands saw a god in the face of the moon because they knew the great power of this celestial body, which is not a planet but a spaceship, according to some. Mind control broadcasts over 100 frequencies emitting mass hysteria slogans in the corresponding language of the planet have been recorded from inside the moon. These slogans include commands for political, social, economic, religious, and cultural behavior towards the nations of the planet. Strategic and geopolitical mandates included, and one of the most successful and coordinated mind control broadcasts, according to the well-known group, the Beatles, according to claims, and claims of telepathic messages as well. The frequencies generated from inside the moon come from conversations of beings, but the chest of 32 kilometers of metal, an alloy of titanium, chromium, iron, nickel, yttrium, zirconium, molybdenum, ruthenium, palladium, although in theory it is a good conductor of sound waves, presents great absorption, with the result that the moon emits only vibrations and frequencies from the operation of the heavy mechanical installations in its interior, again, according to claims. The communications between the moon and its ships and crafts and the ships among themselves give as a language of communication the birthplace of the Hebrew language, Mongolian, with complex syntax and increased vocabulary. It's impossible to translate this volume of unknown vocabulary, and we assume that they are technical terms and generalized concepts that are missing from today's Mongolian vocabulary because the knowledge and the intelligence of the earthlings who use this language did not allow their understanding. And the above radio communications were recorded in the following broadcast formats: one-dimensional linear broadcast corresponding to our own radio broadcasts, two-dimensional surface broadcasts corresponding to our own television broadcasts, and three-dimensional volumetric broadcast that does not correspond to terrestrial technology. It's possible to render with antenna-driven modulated holographic receivers, and the above means that the lunar ships and the moon have transmitters and receivers of stereoscopic technology for communication between them, and such third-party transmissions have recorded audiovisual dialogues between internal lunar crews and crews of external craft, according to claims. The comparison and correspondence of the sound words that accompany the broadcast of stereoscopic broadcasts with the images have enabled linguists to interpret up to 30% of the total vocabulary used by the crews of all specialities inside the moon. The remaining 70% is at most comprehensible not as specific vocabulary, but as a stereotyped phraseology that corresponds to certain actions, intentions, dispositions, interventions, etc., observed in the transmitted images. Soviet scientists Mikhail Vazin and Alexander Cherbakov, in the article they published in an official Soviet government paper, argued that the moon is hollow inside, and it's possible that it is actually a spacecraft made by someone's rational being's distant solar system. Soviet scientists claim that the empty interior is full of fuel for the engines, instruments, control and observation instruments. It was a spacecraft that was capable of traveling thousands and millions of years in space. The beings who built it did so out of necessity to leave the original world they came from. This new theory is based on a set of indications divided into 4 groups. 1. The enigma of the origin of the moon. The 3 theories that were valid until recently were disproved since A. The moon was never part of the Earth from which it was detached. B. The moon was not formed from the same cloud of dust and gases that the Earth was formed, since it does not have the same chemical soil composition as the Earth. C. The moon did not go into orbit around the Earth. Theory of attraction, since such a large body is impossible under normal conditions to go into orbit around such a small planet. Number 2. Evidence from the emptiness of the moon's interior. There's a large difference in density between the Earth and the moon. 3. Indications of the existence of the internal metal casing. Beneath the outer crust is an inner metallic crust 32 kilometers thick. 4. Indications for reinforcements on the outer surface and dark areas. Their composition is titanium, iron, and rare metals. 12 questions that lead us to the conclusion that the moon was placed in orbit around the Earth, and let's take a look at these. A. Why does the moon, which is so close to us, remain one of the greatest astronomical mysteries, according to the confession of NASA officials? B. Why do distinguished scientists confess that they are ignorant of the origin of the moon? Among them, a physicist awarded with the Nobel Prize declared, "None of the explanations we have are valid." C. Why one of the NASA experts expressed the following incredible formulation: "It is easier to prove the non-existence of the moon than its existence." D. Why do the distinguished scientists reach the ridiculous conclusion that the moon does not exist in the face of their inability to explain its origin? E. Why do distinguished scientists characterize the moon as a cosmic anomaly of nature? In their opinion, it's too far away and too large to be a natural satellite of Earth. F. Based on what indications exclude the moon as a natural satellite of Earth? G. Why do scientists refuse to accept the theory of the attraction of the moon by the attraction of the Earth? H. Why do astrophysicists claim that the moon is not possible to have entered into an orbit around the Earth, thanks only to the force of attraction of our planet? I. Why is the almost circular orbit of the moon an additional proof of its unnatural presence around the Earth? J. Why do distinguished scientists formulate the opinion that the moon entered a circular orbit thanks to the intervention of an unknown force? What was this power? K. Why was the moon placed at such a distance from the Earth that its luminous disk is the same size as the luminous disk of the Sun? How is it possible to present the phenomenon of eclipses unique to our solar system? L. Why does the recent knowledge of placing artificial satellites in orbit around the Earth lead us to the surprising conclusion that the moon was once placed by rational beings in this present orbit? Please leave your comments about this, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.